Welcome back to the channel. Before we begin tonight's chilling story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new horror tale. And I have a question for you. What city are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read your comments with great excitement, and I love seeing where everyone is watching from around the world. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin tonight's terrifying story. I was 26, living alone for the first time in a rented duplex outside Eugene, Oregon, and the whole reason I was home that afternoon was because my second grade class had a stomach bug going around, and I finally caught it. I'm an elementary school teacher. I had only lived in that duplex for 3 months. It was one of those long, narrow places where the two front doors were side by side, but the back patios faced different alleys. My neighbor, Marta, lived in the other half. She was in her 60s and worked at a dentist's office, so during the day the place was usually quiet. I was on the couch in sweatpants, grading spelling tests with a trash can beside me, when I heard the recycling bin move outside. It wasn't trash day. At first I thought it was wind. The bins were kept against the fence by the kitchen window, and they sometimes scraped the concrete if the wind came through the alley. But this sound was different. It was slow. Like someone had dragged the blue bin out, stopped, then dragged it again. I muted the TV and listened. There was a soft plastic thump against the fence. Then nothing. I didn't get up right away. I was sick, tired, and I had this thing about not wanting to be the paranoid new person on the block. The duplex was old. The alley was shared. People walked through it all the time to get to their garages. Then the doorbell rang. It was only 2:18 in the afternoon, bright outside, not scary looking at all. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. A man stood on the porch holding a flat cardboard box. He looked around 40. Work jacket, jeans, baseball cap. Nothing about him screamed danger. He was looking down at his phone, not right at the door. I didn't open it. I just called through the door. "Can I help you?" He looked up too fast, like he had been waiting for my voice. "Package for Leah," he said. "I don't know any Leah." I told him he had the wrong address. He looked down at the box, then at the house number next to my door. "This says 118B, he said. "I'm 118A. He turned toward Marta's door, 118B, and pressed her bell. No answer, obviously. She was at work. He knocked twice, then looked back toward my door. "You know when she'll be back?" I almost answered. That's the part one hate remembering. My polite teacher brain wanted to say, "She gets home around 5:30. I was used to being helpful. Parents asked me questions all day. Kids ask me questions all day. People ask normal questions and you answer. But I stopped. "I'm not sure," I said. He didn't move. "Could you take it for her?" I said, "No, sorry." He kept looking at my door, not the peephole exactly, but close enough that I stepped back. "It needs a signature," he said. "Then she can sign for it later." He stood there for maybe 5 more seconds. Then he walked off the porch. I watched through the peephole until I saw him go down the steps. I waited for the sound of a truck starting, but I didn't hear one. I told myself he was probably some random delivery guy using his own car. People do that now. I went back to the couch. About 10 minutes later, I got up for water and noticed something outside the kitchen window. My blue recycling bin was not against the fence anymore. It was directly under the window, turned upside down. It looked like a step. I stood there with the glass in my hand and stared at it. Then I looked at the window latch. It was locked. That window was higher than normal because the duplex sat on a raised foundation. Without something to stand on, most people could maybe reach the sill, but not get their face level with the glass. With the bin upside down, someone could. I backed away from the window and checked the back door. Locked. For a minute, I got angry instead of scared. I thought maybe kids had been messing around in the alley. The neighborhood had a middle school a few blocks over, and kids cut through after school. It wasn't after school yet, but I clung to that anyway. Then I saw the note taped to the inside of the mail slot. Not outside. Inside. It was a torn piece of notebook paper folded once, and pushed through just far enough to hang there. I opened it. It said, "Leah?" That was all. Just the name with a question mark. I froze because the man had never touched my door while I was watching through the peephole. He had stood on the porch, talked to me, and walked away. The mail slot was low near the bottom. He would have had to bend down. So either I missed it, or someone had done it before he rang. I called Marta at work. She answered on the second ring, and I tried to sound casual because I still felt ridiculous. "Do you know anyone named Leah?" I asked. There was a pause. "What?" "Someone came by with a package for Leah. He rang your bell too." Marta got quiet. I could hear office noise behind her. "There's no Leah here," she said. "Maybe a previous tenant?" "No. I've lived here 11 years. You sure he said Leah?" "Yes." She said, "Don't open the door for anyone. I'm calling my son." That scared me more than anything the man had done. Marta was calm, practical. She watered plants in crocks and complained about squirrels. She didn't panic. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Just don't open it," she said. "I'll call you back." I locked the front door again, even though it was already locked. Then I went room to room checking windows. Bedroom locked. Bathroom locked. Little side window in the laundry room locked. When I came back to the living room, someone knocked on the glass of the kitchen window. Not the front door. The kitchen window. 3 light taps. I didn't scream. I didn't move. The house seemed to shrink around me. The blinds were half open because I had wanted daylight. From the hallway, I could see the window but not the person outside. The blue bin was under it. I could see the edge of a sleeve near the glass. Then a man's voice said, not loud, "Leah?" It was the same voice from the porch. I grabbed my phone and went into the bathroom because it was the only room with no window big enough for anyone to climb through. I sat on the floor with my back against the tub and called 911. The dispatcher asked my address. I whispered it. I told her a man was outside my kitchen window and had come to the front asking for a name I didn't know. She asked if my doors were locked. I said yes. She told me officers were on the way and to stay somewhere safe. While I was on the phone, I heard the back gate open. It made this scraping metal sound because the latch stuck. I knew that sound. It was not wind. It was not kids. I told the dispatcher he was in the back patio. She said, "Stay where you are. Do not confront him." The bathroom door had no lock. That bothered me in a stupid, sharp way. Of all the things I had checked in that house, I had never cared that the bathroom door didn't lock. I got up as quietly as I could and pushed the laundry hamper in front of it. It wouldn't stop anyone, but it might make noise. For a while I heard nothing. Then the back doorknob turned. Slowly. It stopped. Turned again. The person didn't knock. He didn't say anything. He just kept trying the knob with patient little movements. I remember the dispatcher's voice in my ear asking what I could hear, and I couldn't answer because I was afraid any sound from me would tell him exactly where I was. Then there was a soft crack from the kitchen window. Not glass breaking, more like pressure on old wood. He was trying to pry the window open. I started crying then, but silently. It felt embarrassing even while it was happening. I was 26 years old, hiding in my bathroom, sick and shaking, with a stranger trying to open my kitchen window in the middle of the day. The dispatcher told me police were close. Then my phone buzzed with another call coming in. "Marta." I didn't answer. I couldn't. A second later, I heard a man yell from outside. "Hey, what are you doing?" It was a different voice. Marta's son, Carlos, lived 6 blocks away. He had gotten there before the police. I later found out Marta had called him and told him to drive over because she didn't like the name Leah. She wouldn't explain it to me until later. From the bathroom, I heard footsteps running along the side of the duplex. Then the front porch shook like someone jumped off it or hit it hard. Carlos yelled again, "Stay inside. I've got him on video." That wasn't true. He had his phone out, but he didn't have a clear video yet. He just yelled it. The back gate slammed. I moved from the bathroom to the hallway and looked toward the front window. I saw the man in the cap running across my little front yard toward the street. Carlos was in the driveway, holding his phone up but keeping his distance. A gray sedan pulled away from the curb half a block down. I hadn't heard it park there. The police arrived maybe 3 minutes later. By then the man was gone. They checked the yard, the alley, the window, the back gate. One officer looked at the blue bin under the kitchen window and just nodded like he had seen this kind of thing before. The kitchen window frame had fresh marks on it. Not deep, but enough. The screen had been bent outward at one corner. On the back patio, they found the cardboard box the man had been holding. It was empty. No label. No package. The note with Leah went into a plastic bag. Carlos had managed to get part of the sedan on video as it left, but the plate was unreadable because it had one of those dark covers. The officer said that didn't mean it was stolen, but it didn't make me feel better. Marta came home early and sat with me while the officers talked in the driveway. She finally told me why the name Leah bothered her. A woman named Leah had lived in a house 2 streets over before I moved in. Marta didn't know her well, just from walking. About a year earlier, Leah had called police because she believed a man was watching her house. She reported someone moving her trash bins, leaving notes, and asking neighbors about her schedule. Nothing came of it because nobody saw enough. Then Leah moved out fast. Marta didn't even know where she went. The officer heard this and asked Marta to repeat it. Later that evening, another officer came back and asked if I had social media accounts. I said yes, but they were private. He asked if I had posted about moving. I had. Not my address, but a photo of my porch with the duplex number visible if you zoomed in. I had posted it when I moved in because I was proud I could afford my own place. The officer didn't lecture me. He just said, "Take that down." They never found the man, at least not that I know of. A detective called me twice over the next month. He said they were looking into similar complaints. He also said the name Leah might not have meant he was looking for her. It might have been something he used to test whether the person inside recognized the name. That part still bothers me, because he didn't need me to open the door. He needed to know I was there. He needed to know I would answer. He needed to know whether Marta was home. The fake package was just a way to get information. For 2 weeks after that, I slept at my friend's apartment. I came back only during the day with someone else. I put frosted film on the windows. I stopped leaving bins under any window. I deleted posts, changed my name on apps, and asked the school not to list my classroom page publicly. I didn't break the lease right away. I couldn't afford to. That was the worst part. I still had to live in the place where I had heard that doorknob turn. Marta became more protective after that. She would text me when she got home. Carlos installed a motion light above the shared driveway. My landlord acted annoyed until the police report mentioned the window frame, and then he fixed it without much argument. About 3 months later, I got a letter at the duplex with no return address. My name was typed on it. Inside was a single blank sheet of paper. Nothing written on it. No threat. No name. I took it to the police. They said without writing or prints, there wasn't much they could do. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was some junk mail mistake. Maybe someone forgot to put something in the envelope. But the envelope had no stamp. It had been put through my mail slot by hand. I moved at the end of that lease. I live in an apartment building now, 3rd floor, locked lobby, no mail slot in my door. I don't answer unexpected knocks anymore. I don't care if the person sounds polite or if they're holding flowers or a package or a lost dog poster. A locked door is not rude. It's a sentence. It says the conversation ends here. And sometimes that sentence is the only reason you get to keep living your normal life. Story 2. The laundromat on Maple and 9th was the only one near my apartment that stayed open all night, which is why I was there at 12:40 a.m. with 2 baskets, wet hair, and $9 in quarters. I was 31 then, working as a nursing assistant at a rehab center in Dayton, Ohio. I was always tired, always behind. My apartment building had one washer in the basement, and it had been broken for almost a week. I needed clean scrubs for a double shift the next morning, so I went to the laundromat after work. There were 3 people inside when I got there. An older man reading a newspaper by the vending machines. A woman folding kids' clothes near the front. And the attendant, a college-looking guy behind the counter with earbuds in, watching something on his laptop. It felt safe enough. The first strange thing was the dryer sheet. I opened washer number 6, and a dryer sheet was already inside it. Not that weird. People leave stuff. I pulled it out and saw writing on it in blue pen. Don't use the back machines. I stood there holding it, waiting for my brain to make it normal. There were 6 washers along the front wall and 6 in the back. The back ones were the big industrial machines. I had planned to use one because I had sheets and scrubs. I looked around. Nobody was looking at me. The woman folding clothes glanced up, then away. The older man turned a page. The attendant laughed at something on his screen. I thought maybe it was a joke. Maybe someone had written it for a friend. Maybe a machine ate clothes. I walked to the counter and said, "Are the back washers broken?" The attendant pulled out one earbud. "What? The back machines. Are they broken?" He looked past me. "No." "Why?" I showed him the dryer sheet. He read it and gave a quick smile, but it wasn't a real one. "Probably some kid," he said. "Should I not use them? They work." He handed the dryer sheet back like he didn't want to touch it anymore. I should have noticed that. I used one of the front washers instead. It was smaller, so I had to split the load. Annoying, but I was too tired to figure out what else to do. The woman with the kids' clothes left around 1. The older man left 10 minutes later. A white van idled outside for a little bit, then pulled away. The attendant went into the back room and closed the door. Then it was just me and the machines. I sat near the front window with my phone plugged into the wall. I remember scrolling through old photos of my ex because I was in that dumb stage after a breakup where you hurt your own feelings on purpose. We had split 2 months earlier. I was lonely, overworked, and trying very hard to pretend I was fine. The bell above the door rang. A man came in wearing a dark hoodie and a reflective construction vest. He had a plastic grocery bag in one hand. He didn't carry laundry. He looked around slowly, then walked to the change machine. That wasn't weird by itself. People came in just to get quarters. He fed a $5 bill into the machine. Quarters clattered into the tray. He scooped them up but didn't leave. He walked to the vending machine, bought a bottle of water, and sat 2 chairs away from me. There were 12 empty chairs. I moved my basket closer with my foot. He opened the water but didn't drink it. After a minute, he said, "Busy night?" I gave a small laugh because that's what you do when you don't want to talk, but also don't want to seem rude. "Not really. You work at St. Anne's?" I looked down at my shirt. I had changed out of my scrub top, but my jacket had the St. Anne's logo on it. "Yeah, my aunt was there," he said. "Oh." He nodded toward my washers. "Long shift." I didn't answer that. I looked toward the counter, but the attendant was still in the back. The man said, "You got a boyfriend coming to help you carry all that?" I pretended not to hear. My phone was in my hand, but I didn't want to call someone and make it a scene. That was my weakness. I had spent my whole life being the calm one, the easy one, the person who didn't make things awkward. Even when I felt unsafe, part of me wanted to manage the room. My washer clicked off. I stood up and went to move my clothes to the dryer. I chose a dryer near the front. The man stayed in the chair, watching me through the reflection in the glass door. While I was loading the dryer, he got up and walked to the back of the laundromat. He didn't put anything in a machine. He just stood near the back hallway where the restroom and supply closet were. Then he looked up at the ceiling, at the cameras. There were 2 cameras I could see, one above the front door and one near the change machine. The back hallway had a black dome camera, but it had a piece of paper taped over half of it. I hadn't noticed that earlier. The man came back and sat down again. My dryer started. 42 minutes. I thought about leaving and coming back, but that felt worse. My scrubs were in there. My apartment was 12 minutes away. It was late. I didn't want to abandon my clothes. The attendant came out at 1:28. He went behind the counter, glanced at the man, then at me. The man stood up right away. "Bathroom key," he said. The attendant hesitated. "It's out of order." "No, it's not. It's out of order tonight." The man smiled without showing teeth. "Since when?" The attendant said louder, "Since now." That was the first time I knew they recognized each other. Not as friends, as people who had already had some kind of problem. The man looked at me, then back at the attendant. "You always make rules for customers?" The attendant didn't answer. He kept his hand under the counter. The man walked toward the door, but he didn't leave. He stood at the front window, looking out at the parking lot. I walked to the counter and kept my voice low. "Do you know him?" The attendant said, "Don't go outside until he leaves." "What's going on?" He looked at the dryers. "Is your stuff almost done?" "No. 30 minutes. He cursed under his breath. I asked again, "What is going on?" He said, "He's been coming in. Not every night. He waits for women by themselves. My manager told me if he comes back, call him." "Call your manager then." I did. "When?" "When he went to the back." That made me cold all over. The man at the window turned and looked at us. The attendant straightened up like he hadn't been talking to me. The man came back to the counter. "You got a problem?" he asked. The attendant said, You need to leave. I'm waiting on my laundry. You don't have laundry. The man lifted the grocery bag. Right here. It was too flat to have clothes in it. The attendant said, leave. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The dryers hummed. One loose button on someone's clothes kept tapping the inside of a machine in the back. Tap, tap, tap. Then the man laughed and walked out. The attendant locked the front door behind him. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. The man didn't leave the parking lot. He stood under the strip mall light, near the far end where the old pizza place had closed. He took out his phone. A minute later, a red pickup rolled into the lot and parked 2 spaces from my car. I hadn't told the attendant which car was mine, but the man walked straight to it. He looked through my windows. Then he tried the driver's door handle. I said, "That's my car." The attendant grabbed the phone again. "I'm calling 911. This was not a movie moment. He wasn't brave in some big way. His hand was shaking. He looked maybe 19. He was scared too. The man at my car looked back at the laundromat. Then he waved. The red pickup door opened. Another person was inside. I couldn't see their face, just a shoulder and a cap. The attendant said into the phone, "Yeah, he's back. He's outside right now. There are 2 of them." I backed away from the window. I kept thinking about the dryer sheet. Don't use the back machines. I asked the attendant, why did it say not to use the back machines? He swallowed and looked toward the back hallway. "There's a door back there," he said. "It goes to the alley." "Is it locked?" "It's supposed to be." The word "supposed" did something to me. Then the back door beeped. Not a loud alarm, just a small electronic beep, like when a code unlocks a door. The attendant turned so fast his chair hit the wall. We both looked down the narrow hallway. The public bathroom was on the right. Storage room on the left. At the very end, a gray metal door led outside to the alley. The handle moved. The attendant whispered, "No." The door opened about 2 inches, then stopped because of a chain latch. Someone outside pushed it again. The chain went tight. The attendant had put the chain on. Earlier, maybe. That was why he had gone into the back. A man's fingers came through the gap and felt around for the chain. I don't know if it was the same man from the front or the driver. I only saw the fingers and part of a sleeve. The attendant yelled, "Get out!" The fingers disappeared. Then the pushing started. Hard, repeated shoves that made the door slam against the chain over and over. The attendant told the 911 operator, "They're at the back door now." I looked at the front window. The first man was still outside, standing by my car. So there were definitely 2. Maybe more. The attendant said, "Come here." He lifted the little counter door and waved me behind it. I stepped in, and he pointed to the floor. "Sit down." I crouched behind the counter, between a trash can and a box of detergent. From there I could see the lower half of the front windows, but not the whole parking lot. The back door slammed again. A screw popped. I heard it hit the floor. The attendant shouted, "Police are coming." That made the front man move. I saw his shoes pass the window. He came to the locked front door and pulled once. Then again. The glass shook. He pressed his face close to the door and looked inside. "Open up," he said. The attendant stayed behind the counter with me, but he stood high enough to be seen. He held a metal broom handle in both hands. "You need to leave," he said. The man said, "She left something in my truck." I didn't know what that meant. I had never seen him before in my life. The attendant said, "No, she didn't." The man kept his face near the glass. "Tell her I know her name." He didn't say my name. That was worse somehow, like he wanted me to wonder how much he knew. The back door slammed again, and this time the chain ripped loose. The attendant whispered, "Run to the nail salon." There was a nail salon 2 doors down in the same strip mall. It was closed, obviously. I stared at him like he was crazy. He pointed through the front glass. A car had just pulled up near the laundromat entrance. Not police. A dark SUV. A woman got out holding keys, walking fast. "My manager," he said. The man at the front door looked at the woman, then looked down the strip mall. He stepped away. The manager was in her 40s, short, wearing pajama pants and a huge coat. She didn't act scared. She held her phone up and yelled, "I'm recording you. Leave." The man said something to her I couldn't hear. She shouted, "Call the police." "Call them again." Then she looked through the glass at us and yelled, "Come out when I open it." Straight to my car. The attendant unlocked the front door. Everything happened fast, but not clean. My basket tipped over. Wet socks fell across the floor. My phone charger yanked out of the wall. I left half my laundry in the dryer. The manager pulled the door open, and the attendant pushed me out first. The man from the parking lot moved toward us, but the manager lifted a can of wasp spray from her coat pocket and pointed it right at him. She said, "Try me." He stopped. The attendant and I got into her SUV. She locked the doors. The man in the reflective vest stood outside my car, looking angry now. Not wild, not screaming, just angry like something had been taken from him. The police arrived about 6 minutes later. The two men were gone by then. The red pickup left right before the first patrol car turned into the lot. The officers searched the alley. They found the back door chain broken and a small flat tool on the ground, like something used to slip latches. They also found a black backpack behind the dumpster. Inside were zip ties, 2 cheap phones, a roll of duct tape, and several women's ID cards. None were mine. I'm not going to pretend I know exactly what they planned, but nobody carries that stuff by accident. The laundromat manager showed the officers camera footage. The paper over the back camera had been placed there earlier in the night by the man in the vest. He came in around 11:15, when another attendant was still there, bought a water, went to the back, and left. He had also taped that dryer sheet note inside washer number 6. That part confused me until the manager explained it. A regular customer had probably found it, read it, and moved it. Or maybe he put it there as a game. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe he wanted to see who reacted to it. The footage showed him watching my car from outside before he ever came in. It showed the red pickup circling the lot twice. It showed the second man coming down the alley, while the first one kept us busy at the front. They never told me whose ID cards were in the backpack. I gave a statement and later got a call saying the pickup had been found abandoned outside Springfield with stolen plates. I never heard of an arrest. The manager paid to replace the back door and cameras. The young attendant quit 2 weeks later. He messaged me once through the laundromat's business page to say he was sorry he hadn't acted sooner. I told him he was the reason I got out. For a long time, I blamed myself for staying. I kept replaying the dryer sheet, the questions, the empty grocery bag. But I know why I stayed. I was exhausted. I needed clean clothes. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to turn a weird feeling into a whole thing. That is what people like that count on. Not stupidity. Normal life. I don't do laundry at night anymore. I don't sit with my back to doors. I keep my car empty so nobody can look inside and learn anything. When a stranger asks personal questions, I don't soften my answer to make the room comfortable. The scary thing about that laundromat was that help was right there. Lights were on. Cameras were up. A person was working. Cars passed on the street. But danger doesn't always wait for empty places. Sometimes it walks into a bright room, buys a bottle of water, and sits 2 chairs away. Story 3. I checked into the Lakeside Motor Inn because it was $38 cheaper than the hotel by the interstate, and at 23, $38 mattered to me more than it should have. I was driving from Tulsa to Duluth for a new warehouse job. Not a dream job, but better pay than I had back home. I had 1 suitcase, 2 boxes in the trunk, and a phone full of missed calls from my mom asking where I was. I was trying to prove I could handle things on my own. The motel was outside a small town in northern Missouri. 1 long building, 2 floors, red doors, ice machine near the stairs. There was a lake somewhere behind it, but I never saw it, just smelled wet mud and old leaves. The woman at the front desk gave me room 214. She was older, maybe late 50s, with a raspy voice and reading glasses on a chain. She slid the key card across the counter and said, "2nd floor, past the ice machine." Then she looked at me and said, "Keep the deadbolt on. We've had raccoons." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She didn't laugh back. Room 214 was at the far end of the upper walkway. I was tired and sore from driving all day, so I didn't inspect much. The bedspread was ugly. The carpet smelled like old smoke, even though there was a no smoking sign. The bathroom fan clicked when I turned it on. The first strange thing was the towel. There was 1 towel hanging on the bathroom rack, and it was damp. Not soaked, just used, like someone had showered a few hours earlier. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I checked the bed. It looked made. The trash cans were empty. The little soaps were wrapped. I almost went back to the office, but I was embarrassed. I had booked the cheapest room in the cheapest motel I could find. I didn't want to seem like some princess complaining about a towel. Also, I was tired in a way that made every extra step feel personal. So I threw the towel into the tub and used the one folded by the sink. I got food from a vending machine for dinner because I didn't want to drive again. Peanut butter crackers and a soda. I sat on the bed and watched videos with the volume low. Around 10:20, someone knocked on my door. Not hard. 2 taps. I muted my phone. A man's voice said, "Maintenance." I didn't move. He knocked again. "Maintenance. Checking a leak." I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The outside light above my door flickered, so I could only see him in pieces. Gray hoodie. Dark pants. Baseball cap. He stood a little to the side, not directly in front of the peephole. I said through the door, "I didn't call maintenance." "Front desk sent me." "What leak?" "Room below you has water." I looked toward the bathroom. The floor was dry. "Sink off. Shower off." I said, "Can you come back tomorrow?" He paused. "It'll just take a second." I didn't like that. Not because it was dramatic, because real workers usually sound annoyed or specific. They say things like, "I need to check under your sink," or "Unit 114 reported water." He said almost nothing. I called the front desk from the room phone. It rang 8 times. No answer. The man outside shifted his weight. The walkway creaked. I said, "I'm calling the office." He said, "They know I'm here." The room phone kept ringing. Still no answer. Then I heard another door open somewhere down the walkway. A woman's voice called, "You okay over there?" The man at my door turned his head. I said louder, "Someone says he's maintenance." The woman said, "There's no maintenance at night." The man walked away. Just like that. No argument. No threat. He went down the walkway toward the stairs. I stayed at the door, looking through the peephole until he passed the ice machine and disappeared. The woman who had called out was standing outside room 210 in a pink robe, holding a cigarette. She looked over at my door. "Don't open up for anybody," she said. "I won't." She said, "Office closes at 10 unless you ring the outside bell." Then she went back into her room. I stood there feeling stupid and grateful at the same time. I put the deadbolt on and used the flip latch too. That should have been enough for me to leave. Looking back, I know that, but it was late. I was in a town I didn't know. I had already paid. My car was full of everything I owned. The nearest bigger hotel was 20 minutes back the way I came, and I was so tired my eyes hurt. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Maybe some local guy looking for a friend. Maybe he had the wrong room. Maybe the motel really did have a leak and the woman in 210 just didn't know. At 11:03, my room phone rang. I jumped so hard I knocked the soda over. I picked it up. A man said, "Front desk." It didn't sound like the woman who checked me in. It was a man's voice, low and flat. He said, "We need you to come down and rerun your card." The system dropped it. I looked at the door, then at the phone. "Who is this?" "Front desk." "The woman at the desk said you close at 10. We're open for guests. Bring your card and ID." I almost did it. That's the part that makes me feel sick. Not because I trusted the voice, but because card problems happen. Cheap motels have weird systems. I was broke, and the idea of being accused of not paying made me anxious. I said, "I'll come in the morning." He said, "You need to do it now or the room cancels." "Then cancel it." He was quiet. Then he said, "You alone up there?" I hung up. The room felt different after that. The same ugly curtains. Same buzzing lamp. Same carpet. But now every object seemed too light, like it could be moved by someone else. I wedged the desk chair under the door handle. It didn't fit perfectly because motel handles are weird, but I jammed it in as tight as I could. Then I packed my suitcase without turning on more lights. I decided I was leaving. I didn't want to go down the outside walkway past the ice machine and stairs. Whoever knocked had gone that way. If he was waiting, I'd walk straight into him with a suitcase in my hand. There was no back door, just the front door and one window facing the parking lot. The window did open, but I was on the second floor. Below it was a patch of mulch and a row of shrubs. Not a good exit, but not impossible if I had no choice. I called my mom. She answered angry because I hadn't updated her, then heard my voice and went quiet. I whispered what happened. She said, "Go to the office now. Stay on the phone. I don't think I should go outside. Then call police." I didn't want to. I know that sounds ridiculous, but nothing had actually happened yet in the way that feels easy to explain. A guy knocked. A weird phone call. A damp towel. It sounded like pieces, not proof. Then someone slid a key card into my door. I heard the electronic lock beep. Green. The handle pushed down. The deadbolt caught. The door moved half an inch and stopped against the metal bolt and the chair. The flip latch rattled. I dropped the phone on the bed. My mom was yelling my name through the speaker. The handle went up. Down again. Slow. Then the person outside pushed hard once, testing it. I grabbed the phone and whispered, "Someone has a key." My mom said, "I'm calling 911 from here." "You call too." I didn't call 911. Not yet. I did something else, and I don't know if it was smart or panic. I opened the window. Cold air came in, damp and loud. The screen was loose, so I pushed it out. It fell into the shrubs below with a soft crash. The door handle moved again. I threw my backpack out the window first, then my suitcase. It hit the mulch and rolled into a bush. I climbed onto the sill. I was not athletic. I was 23, but I had been sitting in a car for 2 days and my legs were stiff. I hung from the outside ledge with both hands and dropped. The landing knocked the air out of me. My ankle twisted, and for a few seconds I couldn't stand. I could hear my mom yelling through the phone upstairs because I had left it on the bed. Above me, the motel door opened. Not all the way. The chair must have slowed it, but it opened enough for someone to get in. I crawled behind the shrubs. A light came on in my room. I saw a shadow move across the curtains. That was the moment I understood I had not overreacted. Someone was inside the room I had just left. I grabbed my backpack and limped along the side of the building, staying below the walkway. My car was parked near the office, not directly under my room. The keys were in my backpack, thank God. The office looked dark from the front, but there was a small night bell near the glass door. I pressed it over and over. No answer. Behind me on the second floor, a door opened. I couldn't see which one from where I stood. I didn't go to my car. I suddenly thought about how exposed I'd be trying to unlock it, start it, turn around. Instead, I crossed the parking lot toward the road. There was a gas station across from the motel, still open, with 2 trucks at the diesel pumps. I ran like someone injured, messy and slow. My ankle hurt with every step. Halfway across the road, a horn blasted. A pickup swerved and the driver yelled at me, but I didn't stop. I pushed into the gas station and went straight to the counter. The cashier was a heavy-set man with a gray beard. He looked up from a crossword puzzle. I said, "Someone got into my motel room." He didn't ask a bunch of questions. He locked the front door, pulled down a little metal arm thing at the side, and said, "Get behind the counter." That was the first time all night I felt like another person had fully believed me. I crouched behind the counter while he called 911. He also called someone named Ray, who I guess worked nights at the truck stop down the road, because within minutes a truck driver came inside and stood by the door with his arms crossed. The cashier asked what room. I told him 214. He looked through the window at the motel. "Lakeside," he said, like the name tasted bad. The police did not arrive right away. It took almost 20 minutes because the closest deputy was coming from another call. During that time, the cashier kept the lights bright and the door locked. The truck driver stood near the window and watched the motel. At one point he said, "Somebody's at your car." I looked over the counter. A person in a dark hoodie was walking around my car with a phone flashlight. He tried the trunk, then the driver's door. I had locked it. I know I had. The truck driver took out his phone and started recording through the gas station window. The person by my car looked up, saw us watching, and walked away toward the side of the motel. He didn't run. That calmness was worse. The deputy arrived at 12:02. Another came a few minutes later. They went to the motel office first, then upstairs to my room. The woman who checked me in had been asleep in a small room behind the office. She came out confused and scared, still tying her shoes. She said there was no male night clerk. She said there was no maintenance man on duty. She said only 2 MasterCards existed, one at the desk and one in a lockbox in the laundry room. The lockbox had been opened. Not broken. Opened with the code. When they checked my room, nobody was inside. My phone was on the bed. The chair was knocked sideways. The deadbolt plate had fresh scratches around it. The damp towel I had thrown into the tub was gone. That tiny detail bothered the deputy. He asked me twice if I was sure there had been a damp towel. I was sure. They looked at the room below mine. Empty. No water leak. They looked at the hallway past the ice machine. There was a service closet there with a second phone mounted inside, an old beige one. The deputy said motel staff used it years ago before everyone had cell phones. Someone had called my room from that service phone. The woman at the desk kept saying, "Nobody should know that code." She looked embarrassed and shaken, but I couldn't tell if she was lying or just realizing how bad her motel was. The guest in room 210, the woman in the pink robe, gave a statement. She said she had seen the same man standing by the ice machine earlier, before he knocked on my door. She thought he was waiting for someone. She also said she had complained 2 weeks earlier about hearing footsteps outside her door late at night, but the motel told her it was probably guests. The gas station truck driver's video showed the man at my car clearly enough to prove he existed, but not clearly enough to identify him. The motel cameras didn't help much. One pointed at the office. One pointed at the driveway. Neither covered the second-floor walkway past the ice machine. The deputies searched behind the motel and found my window screen in the bushes, my suitcase, and a black knit cap near the back fence. They said the cap might be unrelated. Everything at that motel felt like it could be unrelated if someone wanted it to be. I did not stay there, obviously. The cashier let me sit in the gas station until morning. My mom booked me a room at a chain hotel 30 miles away and stayed on the phone while I drove there. I cried only after I got into that room and saw the inside latch on the door. A week later, a deputy called me. He said they had found out the motel lockbox code had not been changed in over a year. Former employees knew it. Contractors knew it. Maybe regular guests knew it. He also said there had been 2 complaints in the past 6 months from women who said someone called their rooms late at night claiming to be the front desk. No arrests. No clean ending. I still took the warehouse job. I made it to Duluth 2 days late with a swollen ankle and a story I didn't like telling people because it made me sound careless. But I wasn't careless. I was cheap. I was tired. I was young enough to think discomfort was just part of proving myself. Now I spend the extra money. I check windows, phones, locks, and exits before I bring my bags inside. If a hotel door opens to the outside, I don't take a far-end room. If someone calls from the desk, I hang up and call back using the number online. I don't care if that sounds dramatic. The thing I remember most is not the man at the door. It's the damp towel. Someone had been in that room before me. Maybe he was rushed out when I arrived. Maybe he planned to come back. Maybe he used rooms like that whenever he could get away with it. Cheap places can cost more than money. Sometimes the part you save is the part you almost don't get back. Story 4. The basket was sitting on the porch when I came home from my first night shift in Larkinville, Missouri. I was 26, newly hired as a nurse at a rehab hospital, and I had moved there because rent was almost half of what I was paying in St. Louis. I was alone in a small yellow rental house with bad water pressure and one working lamp in the living room. I had been awake for almost 19 hours, and all I wanted was cereal and sleep. The basket had a blue dish towel folded over the top. There was a note tied to the handle with twine. "Welcome to Larkinville, Leah May. We're glad you made it. My full first name is Leah, but Leah May is what my grandma called me." I stood there holding my work bag, staring at that note like it might change if I looked long enough. I tried to make it make sense. Small towns talk. My landlord knew my name. The hospital had my name on a new employee board in the lobby. Maybe someone from work had dropped it off. Maybe my mom had told someone more than she realized when she posted about me moving. That last part bothered me, but I was too tired to stand on the porch and be scared of banana bread. Inside the basket were homemade muffins, a jar of strawberry jam, a cheap candle, and one of those little magnet notepads for the fridge. It was all normal stuff, the kind of thing a church lady would give you. The card was handwritten in neat, slanted letters. I didn't need any of it. I put the whole basket on top of the washing machine and went to bed. The house was a 1-bedroom rental on the edge of town, behind a closed flower shop and across from a drainage ditch. It had belonged to an old couple before my landlord bought it and painted everything white. The floors creaked. The windows were old. The kitchen door opened onto a little concrete pad in the back, and the front porch faced a street where hardly any cars passed after dark. I had taken the job because I needed a reset. I had just ended a long relationship that should have ended a year earlier. I was lonely, broke, and trying very hard to act like moving to a quiet town by myself was a brave adult decision instead of something I did because I had no better idea. The next afternoon, I woke up around 4. There was another note under my front door. It had been folded once and pushed through the gap at the bottom. It said, "Hope your first shift went easy. The east window sticks. Don't force it." That window did stick. I had found that out the day before when I tried to air the bedroom out. I called my landlord, Mr. Phelps. He sounded like he was eating. "Did you tell someone to bring me a basket?" I asked. "What basket?" "A welcome basket." And somebody left me a note about the east window. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Maybe Janice from the library. She does things like that. Would she know about the window?" "I might have mentioned it to somebody," he said, but his voice changed. "I don't know. Folks are friendly here." That was the first answer everyone gave me in Larkinville. Folks are friendly here. So I let it go because I wanted to be normal. I didn't want to be the city girl who thought every neighbor was a criminal. I also didn't want to call the police over muffins and a note about a window. 2 days later, I came home from another night shift and found a plastic grocery bag hanging from the doorknob. Inside was a travel mug from the hospital gift shop and a box of the tea I had bought from the grocery store the day before. Not the same brand. The exact same kind. There was no note that time. Just the tea and the mug. I stood on the porch with my keys in my hand and looked up and down the street. It was just after 7 in the morning. The sun was coming up and everything looked harmless. A man was hosing off the sidewalk in front of the flower shop. A woman in a pink robe was walking to her mailbox. Nobody was staring at me. I took the bag inside, locked the door, and sat at the kitchen table. I had bought the tea at Miller's Market after work. I remembered because the cashier had asked if I was new. She had looked at my scrubs and said, "You must be one of the new girls at St. Agnes." I had smiled and said yes. That was all. I told myself she could have mentioned it to someone. Or maybe there were only a few brands of tea in town. Maybe I was making a pattern because I was lonely and tired. That night I bought a cheap door wedge and shoved it under the front door before I went to bed. The next gift came on my day off. It was raining, and I spent the morning unpacking boxes. Around noon, I heard something scrape lightly across the porch. Not a knock. Not footsteps. Just a soft drag like paper against wood. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. On the porch was a flat white envelope. Inside was a printed map of the hospital parking lot. My parking spot had been circled in red pen. Under the map, someone had written, "Closer spot by the side entrance is safer after dark." I dropped the paper like it had burned me. I called the hospital and asked for security. A man named Rick answered. I explained it badly because hearing it out loud made it sound ridiculous. A basket. Notes. Tea. A map. He took it seriously enough to ask where I parked and whether I wanted an escort after my shifts. I said yes, and then I felt stupid for needing one. "Do you know anybody here?" he asked. "No. Any patients or family members giving you attention?" "It's my first week." He paused. "Bring the note in." I put the map and the other notes in a folder and brought them to work that night. Rick looked at them, then asked if he could keep copies. He told me not to throw anything away. He also asked if my social media was public. That embarrassed me. My Instagram wasn't huge, but it was public because I used to post fitness stuff and meal prep pictures. My mom had commented on my moving post using Leah May. My aunt had commented that I had always loved strawberry jam. There was a picture of my car in one of my posts from the day I moved, with my hospital badge clipped to the visor because I thought it was funny. I changed everything to private during my break. For about a week, nothing happened. I started to relax in the way you relax when you are forcing yourself to. I still checked the porch before opening the door. I still kept the door wedge in place. But I stopped expecting something new every time I came home. Then I found the magnet notepad stuck to my fridge. It was the same one from the welcome basket. I had left it in the basket on the washing machine. I knew I had, because I hadn't wanted to use anything from it. Now it was on my fridge with one page torn off. My back door was locked. The front door was locked. Nothing else looked touched. I called Mr. Phelps again, and this time I didn't try to sound calm. "Does anyone else have a key?" "No," he said fast. "Did you come in my house?" "What?" "No." Then somebody did. He came over 20 minutes later with his wife. They checked the doors and windows. The bathroom window latch was loose, but it had been loose when I moved in. He said maybe I had moved the notepad and forgotten. I said I didn't. His wife, Carol, stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed. She was nicer than him, or maybe just less defensive. She asked, "Have you met Marion Bell?" I said no. Carol looked at her husband. He gave her a look like he wanted her to stop talking. "Who's Marion Bell?" I asked. "Older lady," Carol said. "Used to volunteer at St. Agnes. She lives over near Orchard Road." Mr. Phelps said, "Carol." "What?" she said. "She does baskets." "What kind of baskets?" Carol looked uncomfortable then. "Welcome things. Food. Little gifts." "Does she have a key to this house?" "No," Mr. Phelps said, but his answer came too quickly. I made him change the deadbolt that afternoon. He complained about cost until I said I would call the police and make a report about someone entering the rental. Then he went quiet and drove to the hardware store. I worked the next 2 nights. I barely slept during the day. Every sound from the porch made me sit up. Every time the fridge kicked on, I thought someone was in the kitchen. On Saturday morning, I got off at 7. Rick from security walked me to my car. Nothing was under the windshield. Nobody followed me out of the lot. I drove home the long way anyway. The street was empty when I pulled up. There was no basket on the porch. I remember feeling relieved for maybe 3 seconds. Then I saw the dish towel. The same blue dish towel from the first basket was tucked into my mailbox, hanging halfway out like a flag. I didn't touch it. I parked in the driveway and called 911 from the car. The dispatcher asked if anyone was there now. I said I didn't know. She asked if I was safe. I said I was in my locked car. While I was talking, the curtain in my living room moved. Not a lot, just enough. The front curtains were thin white panels I had bought at Walmart. I had left them open when I went to work because it was still light out. Now the left panel shifted, like someone had let go of it. I stopped speaking. The dispatcher said, "Ma'am?" I whispered, "I think someone is inside." Then my front door opened. Only a few inches. The chain caught. I had installed the chain myself the day before. It was cheap and ugly, but it held. I saw a hand through the gap. A woman's hand, pale, with a gold ring on the middle finger. Then I heard her voice. "Leah May?" It was soft, almost embarrassed. "Leah, honey, I brought your towel back." I couldn't move. I could see only the crack of the door and that hand. The chain rattled once, then again. The dispatcher told me to drive away if I could. My car was still running. I put it in reverse too fast and almost hit the trash bin. The front door opened wider behind me. The chain snapped out of the frame with a sound like wood splitting. A woman stepped onto the porch. She looked about 60. Gray hair. Green raincoat. She was holding something wrapped in foil. She didn't run. She didn't shout. She just watched me back out. Then a man came out behind her. He was younger, maybe 35 or 40, in a black hoodie. He had one of my pillowcases in his hand. That detail stayed with me. Not a weapon. Not a bag. My pillowcase, twisted closed like he had stuffed things inside it. I hit the curb, corrected, and drove down the street with the dispatcher still talking in my ear. I didn't go to a neighbor. I didn't stop at the corner. I drove straight to the hospital because I knew there would be security and people awake. My hands were shaking so hard I scraped my car against the concrete post at the parking gate. Rick came outside while I was still on the phone. He took one look at me and said, "Stay in the car." The police met me at the hospital, not at the house. 2 officers went to the rental. The woman and man were gone by then. They found my back kitchen window open. The loose bathroom window had not been used. Nothing was broken except the little screws where the chain had pulled out. My bedroom drawers had been opened. A few things were missing, mostly personal things that made no sense for a burglary. 2 scrub tops, a hairbrush, a framed picture of my grandma, a stack of mail from my counter, and my hospital schedule. The blue towel in the mailbox had a note wrapped inside it. "Sorry we missed you. We'll come by when you're rested." I felt sick when the officer read it. Marion Bell was real. She had volunteered at the hospital years before and still knew people there. She had been told not to come back after several complaints from younger employees. Not violent complaints, just strange ones. Showing up with food, asking which apartments they lived in, leaving notes in lockers. A nurse had once found Marion sitting in her car in the employee lot, crying, with a gift bag on the passenger seat. Marion had a son named Caleb. He had arrests for theft and trespassing. Nothing big enough to make the news. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to explain the pillowcase. They didn't catch them that day. Marion was picked up 2 weeks later after she walked into a different woman's rental house in the next county with a casserole dish. Caleb disappeared before police got there. The worst part was what I learned from Rick. My work schedule had been posted on a clipboard at the nurse's station during my first week. Marion still knew a retired staff member who came in for coffee and talked to everyone. That was probably how she knew my shifts. My nickname came from my own mom's comment online. The tea came from the cashier. The window came from Mr. Phelps mentioning repairs at a diner. No single person had handed her my life. She had collected it in pieces because everyone thought the pieces were too small to matter. I left Larkinville before my probation period ended. I lost money breaking the lease, and I had to sleep on my cousin's couch for a month. I felt weak for leaving at first. Then I stopped feeling weak. I had seen my own front door open from the inside. I don't accept food from strangers anymore. I don't post my schedule. I don't leave curtains open just because I'm coming back before dark. And every time I come home, even now, I look at the porch first. A welcome gift is still a gift. But a locked door is not an insult. It's a line. Story 5. The strangest thing about Maple Bend was how quiet it got after dinner. I was 17, a senior in high school, and my parents had moved us from Harrisburg to this planned neighborhood in eastern Pennsylvania because my dad got transferred and my mom liked how safe it looked. On my 3rd week there, I was alone in our kitchen heating up frozen pizza, while both of them were at a work banquet an hour away. I had one earbud in and was wiping sauce off the counter when I heard the mail slot move. Not the mailbox outside, the mail slot in the front door. It made that thin metal slap sound, then something slid across the inside rug. I froze for maybe 2 seconds, then laughed at myself because it was still light out. It was only 7:12. People delivered flyers all the time. Maple Bend had flyers for everything. Pool rules, trash rules, welcome mixers, parking reminders, a dog walking group, a book club no one in my house wanted to join. I went to the foyer and picked up a folded white card. It had my name on it, not the Carvers or new neighbors. Just my first name, Evan, written in blue pen. Inside it said, "Forgot your porch light again. Please turn it on after sunset. It helps everyone." There was no signature. I stood there reading it like I was missing a joke. Then I looked out the skinny window next to the door. The street looked normal. A man pushed a stroller on the far sidewalk. 2 little kids rode scooters in circles. A sprinkler ticked against someone's lawn. Our porch light was off. I flipped it on and told myself it was probably some neighborhood watch thing. My mom had mentioned Maple Bend had community safety volunteers, which sounded annoying but not scary. I had already gotten corrected once for leaving the trash can too visible from the street. A note about a porch light was exactly the kind of thing these people would care about. Still, the part that bothered me was my name. We had met a lot of neighbors the first weekend, so maybe it wasn't strange. I had told people my name. My mom said small towns were like that. Everyone knew everyone, and I wanted this move to work. I did not want to be the weird kid who hated every neighbor and made my parents regret buying the house. I threw the card in the junk drawer and went back to my pizza. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Porch light looks better. Thanks, Evan." I stared at it long enough for the screen to go dark. Then I unlocked my phone and read it again. I wrote, "Who is this?" The reply came fast. "Maple Bend Safety Circle. We help keep the neighborhood comfortable." I didn't answer. I thought about calling my mom, but I could already hear her reaction. She'd say it was just a neighbor being helpful. My dad would make some joke about HOA spies. I didn't want to sound like I was afraid of a text message. That was my problem at the time. I was lonely, and I was also embarrassed by it. Moving senior year had made me feel like I was always behind everyone else. I was the new kid in classes where people had known each other since kindergarten. So when adults in the neighborhood acted friendly, I tried to take it that way. I didn't want to create drama. At 8 o'clock, I took the trash out because pickup was early Thursday. The air smelled like cut grass and someone grilling. 3 houses down, a woman named Mrs. Voss was standing in her driveway with a watering can, even though nothing near her looked dry. She waved. "Evening, Evan." "Hi. Parents out tonight?" The question was said like normal small talk. She was probably in her 60s, short gray hair, neat clothes, always smiling with just her mouth. "Yeah," I said. "Work thing." "Long drive back from Lancaster," she said. I stopped with my hand on the trash can lid. My parents hadn't told anyone where the banquet was. At least I didn't think they had. She must have seen my face because she added, "Your mother told Beth at Pilates. It goes around." I nodded like that made sense. Then she said, "You're doing fine. Don't forget the laundry room window. It sticks if you don't latch it hard." I looked back at our house. The laundry room window was on the back left side. You couldn't see it from the street unless you were in our yard or the yard behind us. "Thanks," I said. I went inside and checked the window. It was latched. At least it looked latched. I pushed on it and it shifted a little, then clicked tighter. I stepped back and listened to the house. Everything sounded normal. The fridge hummed. The air conditioner clicked on. A car passed outside. I locked the front door and the back door. Then I checked them both again. Around 9:30, I got another text. "Quiet hours start at 10. Garage lights off by then, please." I hadn't even realized the garage light was on. I'd gone out there earlier to look for a phone charger in a box, then left it. This time I texted back, "Stop texting me." No reply came. For a while nothing happened. I sat on the couch and tried to watch a show. The house felt too big. We still had boxes stacked along the walls, and every room had that new house smell mixed with cardboard and paint. At 10:03, the doorbell camera notification popped up on my phone. "Motion detected at front door." I opened the app. No one was there. The camera showed the porch, the yellow light, the edge of our welcome mat, and the dark street beyond. It had recorded 12 seconds. Just empty porch. I replayed it. On the last second, a hand came into frame from the side and pressed a folded paper flat against the door. Then the clip ended. I didn't move for a while. I told myself it was another flyer. Annoying, but still a flyer. I waited 5 minutes before I went to the foyer. This card was tucked halfway under the door, like whoever left it had pushed it in with something thin. It said, "You don't have to be scared. Just answer when checked on." There was a little symbol at the bottom, a circle with 3 short lines coming off it. I had seen it before on the community pool gate and on the Maple Bend welcome binder my mom kept on the counter. I opened the door fast, more angry than brave. The porch was empty. Across the street, a curtain moved in the upstairs window of a blue house. I shut the door and locked it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then my mom called. I picked up right away. "Hey," she said, with music and voices behind her. "Everything okay?" I wanted to say no, but the words felt too big. I said, "Did you give anyone my phone number?" "What? In the neighborhood. Did you give someone my number?" "Maybe the emergency contact sheet," she said. "Why?" "What emergency contact sheet?" "For the community thing. The safety program. It was in the closing packet. They said it was standard." I looked at the welcome binder on the kitchen counter. My mom kept talking. "Are they bothering you?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Not a notification. The real bell. My mom heard it through the phone. "Who is that?" she asked. "I don't know." "Don't open it." I walked to the front hallway but stayed back from the door. Through the skinny window, I saw Mrs. Voss standing on the porch. Beside her was a man I didn't know. He looked maybe 30, wearing a dark polo with that Maple Bend Circle logo stitched on it. Mrs. Voss smiled at the glass. "Evan," she called. "We saw your light on." I held the phone tight. My mom said, "Who is it?" "Mrs. Voss and some guy." "Why?" Mrs. Voss knocked once soft. "Everything's okay," she said. "We just need to check in after that message." The man leaned closer to the door. He didn't smile. "Open up for a minute," he said. "Then we can mark it complete." "Mark what complete?" I didn't answer. My mom said, "Evan, go upstairs. Call your father from the bedroom." I whispered, "I'm not opening it." Mrs. Voss said, "We can hear you, honey." That sentence did something to me. Not because it was loud, because it was calm. The man stepped back and looked toward the street, like he was checking if anyone was watching. Then he lifted his hand and held up a key fob. It was the same black fob my parents used for the pool gate. He tapped it against our front door lock. Nothing happened. Mrs. Voss sighed. "It won't work on private entry, Dean." Dean said, "They didn't opt out." My mom must have heard part of that because she said, "What did he say?" I didn't answer. I was looking at the deadbolt. Dean reached into his pocket and took out his phone. A second later, my phone buzzed with a text. "Please open the door. Refusal extends adjustment period." I backed away from the foyer. The doorbell camera notification came again, then another, then another. They were moving around on the porch, setting it off every few seconds. My dad called, but I was still on with my mom. I switched calls without thinking. "Get out of the front of the house," he said. He sounded different than I had ever heard him. "Go to the pantry and lock the door." "Our pantry doesn't lock." "Then go upstairs. Take your keys." "What is this?" "Evan, move." I ran up the stairs, trying not to make noise and making too much anyway. My room faced the backyard. I shut the door and pushed my desk chair under the handle, even though I knew that barely did anything. From upstairs, I heard another sound. Not the doorbell. A soft metallic scrape from the back of the house. The laundry room window. I went to my bedroom window and looked down. Our backyard was dark except for the neighbor's patio lights behind us. A narrow strip of grass separated our yard from the next fence. A flashlight beam moved across our patio. Then it clicked off. My dad was still on the phone saying, "Stay away from windows." I whispered, "Someone's in the backyard." He cursed under his breath. "I'm calling 911 from here." "You call too." I called with my mom on one phone and my dad on the other. It was clumsy and stupid, but I couldn't think. The dispatcher asked for my address and I gave it. She told me to stay on the line and stay in a locked room if I could. Downstairs, the laundry room window rattled. Once, then again. Then it stopped. I heard Dean's voice outside, muffled through the walls. "He's upstairs." Mrs. Voss answered him, but I couldn't make out the words. I turned off my bedroom light. I don't remember deciding to do it. My hand just went to the switch. My window overlooked the roof above the garage. When we moved in, my dad had joked that if there was a fire, I could climb out onto that roof and drop to the driveway. I had rolled my eyes. Now I unlocked the window with shaking fingers and pushed it open. Cold air came in. The dispatcher said, "Do not climb out unless you have to." I looked at my bedroom door. The chair was still under the handle. Then the house phone rang downstairs. I didn't even know we had plugged it in yet. It rang and rang. Then it stopped. A few seconds later, something thudded against the front door. Not hard enough to break it. More like someone testing it with their shoulder. The dispatcher asked what that sound was. I said, "They're trying the door." Another thud. Then I heard a voice through the doorbell speaker. Dean's voice, but tinny and close. "Evan, your parents want us to stay with you until they get back." My dad heard it through my phone and shouted, "No, we don't." Dean kept talking. "Come downstairs. You're making this worse than it is." That was the part that made me move. Not panic. Not bravery. Just the sick feeling that if I stayed in that room, eventually the door or window would open, and he would still be talking in that same flat voice. I climbed onto the garage roof with my phone in my hoodie pocket and my car keys in my hand. The shingles were rough and cold under my socks. I hadn't put on shoes. I slid more than climbed toward the edge above the driveway. My car was in the driveway below, but Dean and Mrs. Voss were near the front porch. If they looked up, they'd see me. I stayed low and moved toward the side of the roof where a big maple tree hung over the driveway. The branches were thin, but the trunk was close enough to grab. I got one foot on the gutter, then thought the gutter would rip off and make noise. I sat on the edge instead and dropped. It hurt more than I expected. Pain shot up my left ankle, and I nearly fell. I bit my sleeve so I wouldn't yell. The doorbell camera clicked again. Someone was coming off the porch. I limped to my car, unlocked it with the fob, and threw myself into the driver's seat. The lights flashed. Dean turned. For a second, he just stood there staring at me across the lawn. Then he walked fast toward the driveway. Not running. Walking like he didn't want to look like he was chasing me. I started the car. My hands were shaking so badly I hit the wipers first. They scraped across dry glass. Dean reached the passenger side and tried the handle. It was locked. He knocked on the window with 2 fingers. "Evan," he said, like I was late for practice. I backed out without closing my door all the way. It swung open and then slammed shut when I braked at the street. Mrs. Voss stood under the porch light with her arms crossed, watching. I drove to the main road barefoot and crying in a way I hated. I didn't stop until I reached a Wawa about 4 miles away. I parked under the brightest lights and went inside with no shoes and my phone at 1%. The cashier took one look at me and said, "You need help?" I nodded. My parents got there before the police did. My dad looked like he had aged 10 years in 40 minutes. My mom kept touching my shoulders like she was checking I was real. The police went to our house. Dean and Mrs. Voss were gone by then. Nothing was broken. The laundry room window had marks on the paint, but the latch held. There were footprints in the damp mulch under it. The officer at Wawa asked me if they had threatened me. I said no because they hadn't. Not in a way that sounded good on a report. My dad showed the police the texts. My mom showed them the closing packet. That was how we found the binder page none of us had really read. It was called the Maple Bend Safety Share Program. My parents had initialed it with a stack of other HOA papers. It allowed designated neighborhood volunteers to access resident contact info, emergency schedules, exterior camera alerts shared through the community app, and routine wellness check guidelines. It did not say they could come into our house. It did not say they could scare a kid alone at night. But behind that page, tucked in the back cover, was another sheet. It wasn't part of the official packet. It was a printed weekly routine for our family. Dad leaves 7:10. Mom walks 6 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday. Evan upstairs light off 11:30. Laundry window sometimes unlatched. No dog. Teen home alone, July 18th, 6:30 to 11:45. There were checkboxes beside my name. The police took it. My parents pulled us out of that house within 2 weeks. They fought with the HOA for months. I don't know what happened to Dean. Mrs. Voss never got charged with anything. She told police she was just concerned, and that the whole thing had been misunderstood. Maybe some people believed her. I don't. I still think about how many little things I explained away because they came with a smile and a nice lawn. A safe neighborhood can become unsafe when everyone thinks they have a right to your routine. I don't answer unexpected texts anymore. I don't let people turn watching into caring. And when someone says they just want to check on me, I remember Dean's hand on my car door and keep moving. A locked door is not rude. It is a line. Story 6. By the time my laundry finished, the laundromat was almost empty, and the rain had turned the parking lot into one big mirror. I was 22, working as a nursing assistant in Dayton while taking community college classes, and I did my laundry after late shifts because the machines were cheaper after midnight. I was tired, broke, and still not used to being single after a bad breakup, so I had my hood up, one earbud in, and a plastic basket full of scrubs at my feet when a man came in and asked me where Mercy Street was. That was the first strange thing. Not because of the question. People asked for directions there all the time. The laundromat sat at the end of a strip mall with a closed pharmacy, a cheap pizza place, and a smoke shop that kept its lights too bright. The strange part was that he was holding his phone with the map open, and he didn't look lost. He looked like he was waiting for me to answer wrong. He was maybe mid-30s, clean jacket, work boots, short beard. Normal enough. He stood just inside the door with rain dripping from his sleeves. Mercy Street? I said. I don't think there's a Mercy Street around here. He showed me the phone. The screen was too dim for me to see. He didn't step close, but he held it out like he wanted me to come closer. I'm supposed to meet my cousin, he said. She said behind this place. I pointed toward the windows. There's an alley behind the building, but it's not a street. He looked over his shoulder at the glass door. Does it come out by the railroad fence? I don't know. You from around here? I shook my head and went back to folding towels. That should have been the end of it. He stayed. He walked to the vending machine, bought a pack of gum, then stood there chewing and staring at the dryers. The laundromat had 12 washers on one side and dryers stacked along the other. A row of orange chairs sat under the front windows. The bathroom was in the back, next to a locked office door with a handwritten sign that said employees only. There was no employee there. At night, the owner watched by camera and came by if someone called the number taped to the change machine. That was one reason it was cheap. Another woman was there at first, a tired-looking mom with 2 kids asleep in a rolling basket. She left at 12:18. I remembered because I checked the time and thought I had 12 minutes left on my dryer. When the door closed behind her, the place got louder. The machines thumped. Rain hit the windows. The fluorescent lights buzzed like insects. The man looked at me again. "You work at Kettering?" he asked. I looked down at my scrub top. My name badge was clipped to my pocket from my shift. It said Maya R. and the hospital logo. "Kettering North," he said. My aunt was there. I took the badge off and shoved it in my hoodie pocket. "Sorry," I said because I didn't know what else to say. He smiled a little. "You don't remember her?" "No, that's okay." He walked out after that. I watched him through the front window. He crossed the parking lot and disappeared around the side of the pizza place, toward the back of the building. I let out a breath and told myself I was just tired. People were weird at midnight. Some people talked too much. Some people had no idea they were making you uncomfortable. My dryer buzzed. I pulled out my scrubs and started folding fast. 5 minutes later, the door opened again. Not the man this time. A young woman came in wearing a soaked gray hoodie. She looked around like she expected someone to be there. She was probably my age, maybe younger. Her hair stuck to her cheeks from the rain. "Is there a phone here?" she asked. "There's a number for the owner," I said. "No, like a phone I can use." I held up mine but didn't hand it over. "You need me to call someone?" She looked toward the windows. "My brother's outside," she said. "He locked his keys in his car." I felt bad for her. That was the truth. She looked cold and embarrassed, and I knew what it was like to have no one to call. "What's the number?" I asked. She told me a number too fast. I typed it in, but before I pressed call, she said, "Actually, can you come tell him? He doesn't answer unknown numbers." I looked at her. "He's right behind the building," she said. The machines kept going behind us. I almost said yes. That is the part one hate admitting. I almost walked out because I didn't want to seem dramatic, and because she was a woman, and because I had been trained at work to help people who looked stressed. Instead I said, "I'm not going outside." Her face changed for half a second. Not anger. More like the expression disappeared. Then she smiled. "Okay, no problem." She walked to the bathroom door and tried it. It was locked. Then she looked at the office door. "Is someone working?" "No." She nodded and left. I stood there with one folded scrub shirt in my hands and didn't move until her shape passed the front windows. She didn't go to a car. She went toward the side of the building, same as the man. I put everything in my basket without folding the rest. My car was parked right in front, maybe 20 feet from the door, but the parking lot felt different now. Too empty. Too shiny. The windows reflected the machines behind me, so I couldn't see clearly outside unless I got close. I called the number taped to the change machine. A man answered on the 4th ring, sleepy and annoyed. "Spin City Laundry." "Hi," I said. "I'm at the Linden Avenue location. There are people outside acting weird. What are they doing?" I hated that question because it made everything sound small. "They keep asking me to go behind the building." There was a pause. "You alone?" I didn't like hearing it, even from him. "I'm a customer." "Stay inside," he said, more awake now. "Don't go out the back. I'm calling Darius." "Who's Darius?" "He closes the pizza place. He's next door. Stay where cameras see you." I looked up at the black half-dome camera in the corner. A wet tapping sound came from the front window. The man was outside again. He stood under the awning, just beyond the glass, and lifted one hand. Not a wave. More like he was getting my attention in class. The woman stood behind him near the edge of the window. The man pointed toward the side of the building, then mouthed something I couldn't hear. I backed away. The owner said, "What's happening?" "They're at the window." "Go behind the folding table. Keep the phone on." The man outside tried the door. It opened. I had forgotten the laundromat didn't lock during business hours. He stepped in, shaking rain from his jacket. "Hey," he said, casual. "You didn't tell her, right?" I held the phone tighter. "I'm leaving," I said. He stood between me and the front door. "Just come look at the sign," he said. "It says Mercy right there. You told me it didn't." "I don't care what it says." His eyes went to my basket. "You live close?" "No." "You got somebody coming?" I didn't answer. The woman came in behind him and stayed by the door. She looked at the floor. The man took one step closer. From next door, I heard a metal crash. Then someone pounded on the wall between the laundromat and the pizza place. A man's voice yelled, "Maya? You good?" The man in front of me turned his head. I didn't know Darius, but I yelled, "No." Everything moved at once, but not like a movie. It was messy and stupid. The woman stepped away from the door. The man said, "Don't do that," like I had embarrassed him. I grabbed my basket, then dropped it because it was too full. Scrubs spilled across the floor. The back office door opened. A big man in a pizza shop apron came through holding a ring of keys and a mop handle. Later I learned the pizza place and laundromat shared a utility hallway for deliveries, and Darius had a key because he helped the owner close when machines jammed. He looked at the man and said, "You need to leave." The man lifted both hands. "We're just asking for directions." Darius looked at me. "Do you know them?" "No." The woman started crying, but there were no tears. She said, "We didn't do anything." Darius didn't argue. He walked to the front door and held it open. "Out." The man stared at him for a long second. Then he laughed once and walked out. The woman followed. Darius locked the front door after them, even though the sign said open 24 hours. Then he pulled a metal grate halfway across it from the inside. "They go to a car?" he asked me. We watched through the window. The man and woman didn't go to a car. They walked to the side of the strip mall again and disappeared around the corner. Darius said, "Get your stuff. I'll stand here." My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't fold anything. I just shoved damp clothes and dry clothes together. Darius kept looking out the window. He didn't make me feel silly. He didn't ask me to explain it again. He just said, "You parked out front?" I nodded. "I'm walking you." He called the owner back from his own phone, then told me to wait. 2 minutes later, another person came out of the pizza place, a girl with purple hair and a baseball bat she clearly did not want to use. She stood under the awning while Darius walked me to my car. The rain had slowed. When I opened my car door, something white fell from under my windshield wiper. It was a folded piece of receipt paper. Darius picked it up before I could. He read it, and his face went still. "What?" I asked. He handed it to me. It said, Maya R. Kettering North. Blue Civic. Gets off 11:30. Under that, someone had written, Merseyside. I had never heard anyone call the alley that. Darius looked toward the side of the building. "Drive to the speedway on 3rd, he said. "Don't go home. I'll follow you." I did exactly that. The speedway was busy enough to feel real. 2 truckers were inside. A cashier was mopping near the coffee machines. I parked right by the door and sat there while Darius spoke to the laundromat owner and then to the police. The police did come, but not in time to catch them. They checked behind the strip mall and found nothing except a narrow service lane running along the railroad fence. It wasn't named on Google Maps. It wasn't a real street anymore. Years ago, before the pharmacy and pizza place, it had been a cut-through for delivery trucks. Locals called it Mercy because of an old Mercy medical storage building that used to sit back there. The owner came in around 2 a.m. and pulled the camera footage. I watched some of it from behind the counter at Speedway because the officer wanted me to identify the people. The footage showed the man entering the laundromat at 11:42, almost half an hour before he spoke to me. He sat in the corner chair with his hood up while I changed washers. I had my earbuds in and never looked over. It showed him standing near my car at 11:58. It showed the woman come in from the service lane, not from the parking lot. It showed the man slide the receipt paper under my windshield wiper while I was folding clothes. The owner also found that someone had unplugged the old wall phone near the bathroom. I hadn't even noticed it was there because a plastic plant was pushed in front of it. A week later, a detective called me. He told me they hadn't identified the man or woman, but they had taken my notes seriously because another woman had made a similar report at a different laundromat on the west side. Same kind of thing. A fake street name. A reason to go behind the building. A man and a woman together, because a woman made it feel safer. I stopped going to that laundromat. For months, I did laundry at my friend's apartment even though her machines were terrible and left everything smelling like wet pennies. I stopped wearing my work badge outside the hospital. I stopped putting my college parking pass where people could read it from the windshield. I started looking at reflections in windows, not because I wanted to be paranoid, but because I had learned how easy it was to be studied in plain sight. The part that bothers me most is not that the street was missing from the map. It's that I was standing in a bright room, under cameras, next to a public road, and they still almost got me to walk into the dark because they made it sound like helping. Public does not always mean safe. Sometimes it only means other people can watch the beginning and still miss what is happening. Story 7. The welcome video started playing before I touched the remote. I was 28, a substitute teacher from Tulsa, driving alone to a family wedding in North Carolina because flying was too expensive. I had booked a cheap guest house outside Knoxville for one night, and after 9 hours on the road, all I wanted was a shower, gas station food, and sleep. I was standing in the rental's little living room with my backpack still on when the TV clicked on, and a smiling man on the screen said, "Welcome, Jenna." I actually smiled at first. It felt cheesy but not scary. Hosts do things like that now. They leave baskets with instant coffee. They print your name on a chalkboard. They send 5-page check-in instructions for a place with one door. The man on the screen was older, maybe 50, wearing a Tennessee Volunteers sweatshirt. He stood in the same living room I was standing in. Behind him was the green couch, the fake plant, the little shelf with board games. "Thanks for choosing Pine Hollow Guest House," he said. "Wi-Fi is on the fridge. Please remove shoes by the door. The back porch light is motion activated. If you need anything, message through the app." The video ended with soft guitar music. I remember thinking it was weird that he used my name, but not weird enough to leave. My emotional state mattered. I had just gone through a breakup 2 months earlier, and this wedding was for my younger cousin. I was already dreading the questions about why I came alone. I was trying to prove I could handle things by myself. Also, the place was $62 cheaper than any hotel nearby. I took my shoes off by the door like the video said. The guest house was behind a main house on a wooded property. Not deep woods, just that semi-rural area outside a city where every driveway is long and every house looks farther away than it is. The host's main house sat up the hill with 2 porch lights on. The guest house had its own gravel parking spot and a small deck facing trees. The lock was a keypad. The code was the last 4 digits of my phone number. I didn't love that, but the app message said they did it for guest convenience. I had seen that before. Inside, everything was clean. Almost too clean. The bed was made tight. The bathroom smelled like bleach. There were no personal photos, no drawers full of old junk, nothing to make it feel like anyone had ever lived there. I heated a gas station burrito in the microwave and called my mom. She asked if the place was okay. "Yeah," I said. "It's kind of weird, but fine." "What kind of weird?" "They made a welcome video." "That's nice." "It said my name." "That's very nice." I didn't argue. After we hung up, I opened the fridge for water and saw the Wi-Fi card held by a magnet. Under it was a printed checkout list. Jenna M. One night stay. Arrived, pending. Vehicle, white Corolla. The vehicle part made me pause. The rental app didn't ask for my car. Then I remembered I had messaged the host earlier that day saying, "I'm in a white Corolla and should arrive around 8. I had sent that because the driveway was hard to find and I didn't want to park in the wrong spot. So again, there was an explanation. I put the paper back. At 9:17, the app dinged. "Host, hope the drive was smooth. Let me know once you're settled." I typed, "All good, thanks." Host, "Great. Please keep curtains closed after dark. Deer hit the glass." That sounded like something a country host would say. I closed the curtains. There were 3 windows in the living room and 1 in the bedroom. The bedroom curtain was already closed. I noticed that because the bottom edge was tucked behind a small table, like someone had been careful with it. I showered, changed into sweatpants, and sat on the bed scrolling through my phone. Signal was weak. Wi-Fi worked, but barely. At 9:46, the TV in the living room clicked on again. I heard the same soft guitar music. I got up and walked to the doorway. The screen showed the host again. but this time he was standing outside the guest house, near the gravel parking spot. It was dark behind him. My white Corolla was visible over his shoulder. "This is a reminder for tonight's guest," he said. "Please do not park past the wooden post. Service access must remain clear." I looked through the living room curtain gap toward my car. It was parked exactly where I had left it. The video was not live. I could tell because the host was wearing a red cap in the video, and no one was outside now. I also didn't hear anyone, but it had been filmed after I arrived. My car was in it. I checked the app. No new messages. I wrote, "Did you just send another video?" No answer. I stood in the living room feeling stupid and exposed. The TV returned to the home screen. Some streaming stick was plugged into the back, and the account name was Pine Hollow Stays. I unplugged the TV. The room went dark except for one lamp. Then my phone dinged. "Host, everything okay?" I stared at it. I had not made noise. I had not called. The TV was unplugged, but maybe the host got alerts when guests used devices. Maybe smart TVs did that. I didn't know. I wrote, "Yes. Just tired. Host, long drive alone. Get some rest." I hadn't said I was alone in the app. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to think through every message I had sent. Maybe I wrote, "I'm driving alone" earlier when asking about late check-in. I scrolled through the thread. I had not. There were only 5 messages. Arrival time. Parking. Wi-Fi. Thanks. That was it. At 10:08, something tapped against the bedroom window. I did not move. It came again. Tap. Then a scrape, light and slow, like a branch brushing glass. I forced myself to stand and go to the wall beside the window, not in front of it. I pulled the curtain just enough to see the corner. There was no branch near that window. The guest house bedroom faced the hill toward the main house. A strip of yard ran between them. The host's porch lights were still on, but the upstairs windows were dark. Then I saw a small green dot near the top corner of the window frame outside. It was a reflection, maybe, or a bug, or one of those tiny lights on electronics. I let the curtain fall. My phone dinged again. "Host, please don't open windows at night. Bugs are bad this week." I had not opened the window. I put on my shoes. Not because I had a plan. I just suddenly needed shoes on. My car keys were on the kitchen counter. My backpack was by the door. My suitcase was in the bedroom, open, clothes everywhere. I started packing, but my hands were clumsy, and I kept dropping things. Then I stopped. The floor near the front door had a small black floor mat. When I came in, I had set my shoes on it. Now the corner of the mat was flipped up. Under it was a white envelope. My name was written on it. I did not touch it at first. Then I picked it up with 2 fingers and opened it. Inside was a photo printed on regular paper. Grainy, black and white. It showed me at a gas pump earlier that evening. I knew the station. It was the one where I bought the burrito. I was standing beside my car with my hair pulled back, looking down at my phone. On the back someone had written, "You made good time." I felt strangely calm for a few seconds, like my brain stopped letting in new information. Then the keypad lock on the front door beeped. One beep. Not the sound of the door opening. The sound it made when someone pressed a number. I looked at it. Another beep. Someone outside was entering a code. I grabbed my backpack and keys. My suitcase stayed open on the bed. I didn't care. The keypad beeped 3 more times. Then a low error tone sounded. Wrong code. A message came through the app. "Host, sorry, checking a maintenance alert. Stay inside." I backed away from the front door. The keypad beeped again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Error tone. It was not maintenance. It was a person trying numbers. I thought about the back door, but there wasn't a real back door. Just a sliding glass door to the deck, with a broomstick in the track. The deck faced trees and dropped down to uneven ground. Beyond that was darkness and no clear road. The front door was closer to my car. The keypad beeped again. I called my older brother, Mark. Not 911 first. I know people will say that was wrong. But in that moment, I wanted a voice I knew, and I wanted someone who would not ask me to prove I was scared enough. He answered on the second ring. "What's up?" "Someone's trying to get into my rental." His voice changed. "Where are you?" I gave him the address from the app, talking quietly. The keypad stopped. Outside, gravel crunched. Not walking away. moving to the side. Mark said, "Get in your car if you can. Go now. Don't pack. I don't know where they are. Hit the alarm." "What?" "Your car alarm. Do it." I pressed the panic button on my key fob. My Corolla erupted outside, horn blasting over and over, lights flashing through the curtains. Everything after that happened fast, but not clean. The motion light over the deck snapped on. For 1 second I saw a shape move past the sliding glass door. Not close enough to touch it, just someone crossing the deck low, like they had been crouched there. I screamed. I hate that I screamed, but I did. Mark yelled, "Get out front now." I ran to the front door, turned the deadbolt, and yanked it open. A man stood about 10 feet away near my car, one hand raised against the flashing lights. He was not the host from the video. He was younger, maybe late 20s, with a trimmed beard and a dark hoodie. For half a second, we both froze. Then he said, "Jenna, calm down." Hearing my name from him made me move. I didn't run to my car. He was too close to it. I ran up the driveway toward the main road, with my phone in my hand and Mark still shouting from the speaker. Gravel slid under my shoes. Behind me, the man said, "Wrong way." "Jenna." "Hey." He didn't sprint after me. That almost made it worse. He followed at a fast walk, like he believed I would stop if he sounded reasonable. The driveway was longer than it looked from the car. Trees crowded both sides. The main house was to my left, lights still on, but I didn't trust it. I didn't know who lived there. I didn't know if the man behind me came from there. When I reached the road, I turned toward the only light I could see. A small church sign maybe a quarter-mile away. The road had no shoulder, just wet grass and a ditch. A pickup truck came around the bend. I stepped into the edge of the lane waving both arms. The truck slowed, then stopped several yards ahead. It was a landscaping truck with 2 men inside. The passenger rolled down the window. "Please," I said. "I need help." The man from the driveway had stopped at the edge of the property. He stood in the dark near the mailbox. The driver looked past me and saw him. "You know him?" he asked. "No." "Get in the back seat." I got in. The passenger locked the doors right away. The man near the mailbox didn't come closer. He just lifted his phone like he was taking a picture of the truck. The driver said, "We're going to the Exxon." Mark was still on the phone. He had already called 911 from his end and given them the address. The driver did not take me back to the guest house. He did not ask for the whole story. He drove to the Exxon 5 minutes away, parked under the lights, and waited with me until a deputy arrived. The deputy went to the property. By the time he got there, the younger man was gone. The host from the video, whose name was actually Alan, came outside and acted confused. He told the deputy he had no idea who would try to enter the guest house. He said the welcome videos were automated. He said maybe I misunderstood the TV. Then the deputy asked about the photo from the gas station. Alan said he didn't know anything about it. He also said he had been asleep. The problem was, the rental app showed Alan's account had sent me messages at the same time someone was pressing the keypad. Later, the platform's safety team told me the host claimed his nephew sometimes helped with turnovers and had access to the guest messaging system. The profile disappeared within 3 days. My money was refunded. They sent me a long email with words like policy violation and investigation, but they would not tell me much. The deputy called me a week later after speaking with the gas station manager. The station's cameras showed a dark SUV pulling in 2 pumps away from me that night. A man got out, never bought gas, took something from his dashboard, and left right after I did. The plate was unreadable because of mud. They could not prove it was the same man from the driveway, but the timing matched. The envelope under the mat had no fingerprints they could use. The photo was just printer paper. My suitcase was mailed back to me by the sheriff's office after Alan agreed to let a deputy retrieve it. Half my clothes were missing. Nothing valuable. Just clothes. That detail bothered me more than the money. For a while after that, I only stayed in chain hotels with interior hallways. I sent my location to Mark every time I traveled. I stopped telling hosts what car I drove unless there was no other choice. I started covering my name on luggage tags. I stopped trying so hard to be the kind of woman who could handle everything alone without making a fuss. I still don't know what the plan was. Maybe it was to scare me. Maybe it was to rob me. Maybe the nephew had done this before with other women traveling alone, and most of them were too embarrassed to report something they couldn't fully explain. What I know is this: the video did not welcome me. It proved I had been noticed before I ever reached the door. Cheap places can cost more than money. Sometimes the real price is finding out how easily a stranger can turn your name into a handle.